how human societies are administered or controlled is basically a psychological question. What is the best form of administration or social control or leadership? Is it authoritarian leadership or democratic leadership, or is the laissez-faire situation best? Many psychologists have thought of this. H.J. Eysenck, who was professor of psychology in University of London, has written a book called The Psychology of Politics, in which he relates human personality to politics, the personality of people and the personality of leaders, and the relationship between the two. Psychologists like Rick Fromm have thought considerably about this, which is the best form of administration. If we study animal behavior as well as behavior of people in primitive societies, we note that there are different patterns. In very stable societies where people are not aggressive, administration is affected by a board of members. In India, this has been called the Panchayat. This has been there in very ancient times. When animals become aggressive as a result of population stress or other reasons, then males fight for supremacy and the winner becomes the leader. And the leader mates with as many females as possible. He keeps a harem. And then the other males join together and kill the leader and fight among themselves for supremacy. And the most successful one becomes the next leader. So this goes on and on. So there is utter disorder and wanton killing and all that. Human societies also follow this pattern. Even in Africa, there are peaceful tribes as well as there are aggressive tribes. And as soon as a tribe becomes aggressive as a result of population stress or some other reason, there is this competition to become the king. And there is continued fighting, killing the leader, and the next strongest one assuming kingship. Human beings started admiring this ability to lead in battle as a very desirable quality in evolution. We admire Alexander the Great, and often divine qualities are attributed to the one who is successful in battle. Alexander went to Egypt to get an assurance that he has some kind of divinity. And though he died at a very young age, many people started admiring him. Alexander became a popular name all over the world. And in India, the name Kumar became very popular after Alexander's invasion. And even concept of gods have been influenced by Alexander. We have the Kumara Swami, who carries a lance, which was Alexander's favorite weapon. Democracy came to the world when, in ancient Greece, they decided to stop fighting. Different cities used to fight with each other, city-states, and then they decided to have an elected leader. That is, people actually elect a leader. Socrates was against this. Socrates said that people are not competent to elect their leader. They will be guided by instinctual concerns. They will be guided by the old concept of the successful warrior who can lead the people in war. But anyway, Greek democracy became a model to other countries, and democracy spread all over the world. England at one time used to rule the world, and as a result of Cromwell's attempt, democracy came to England. Though there is a formal king or queen, England became a democratic country, and they had two parties who competed in elections, and this spread all over the world, and democracy was introduced in most of the countries which England colonized, and democracy came to India also. In many countries, people are not mature for democracy, but democracy has been introduced by force, or because the colonizing country had a democracy. So in many African countries there is a namesake democracy, but one party which comes into power will not allow another party to come up. The rival candidates in an election are simply killed, and once a party is in power, they manipulate everything to see that they continue to rule. So democracy becomes a farce. And if you study countries which have democracy in the world today, we find that all of them are not the same. In countries like India, political murders are taking place almost every day. So there is a lot of violence associated with the elections, and the propaganda involves symbols which remind you of the ancient warring between different factions. For example, there is the procession, which reminds you of an army marching in, and there are shouts of victory, and very obviously the symbols which are employed by the candidates remind you of the king who leads his followers in battle. Obviously, the person who is elected shows signs of a fighter rather than an economist or a wise man. So the criticism of Socrates is valid today more than ever. And a pattern of administration creates a certain mindset in the people. So the mindset that is brought in is the mindset of the ancient world, where countries used to fight with each other for territory, and so long as this mindset continues, there will be war, because when one people of one country sees another country having one leader, he may be called a president or prime minister, it doesn't matter, the other country is stimulated to make an attempt. So the kind of administration prevailing in the world determines whether the countries will go on fighting with each other or not. Today we have reached a stage where people all over the world are interacting with each other very much more than in previous years. For example, one can travel to the other side of the earth in a few hours, and there is the internet where immediate communication is possible, and there is multiple citizenship increasingly allowed by many countries. You can have breakfast in one country, lunch in another country far away, and dinner in still another country on the other side of the globe. So when this is taking place, there are economic problems. Where will you pay your income tax? You may have businesses all over the world. So where will he pay the tax? So we are forced to think of a world government and a world tax. So how will the administration be, or how should be the administration? What kind of leadership will lead to a world government and world citizenship and world administration? For a solution, we have to look to ancient societies which had a peaceful kind of existence and peaceful leaders. Obviously, the situation is one where the social control, administration and leadership is performed by a selected group of people, not an elected set of members. Selection is different from election. The best people are selected by an expert committee. In the olden days, Panchayat members were not elected but selected. The ones who contributed most to the group were selected as members of the Panchayat. Usually there were 5 people and there was no single president or authority, but all the people were equally responsible for supervising the administrative machinery. When you have a position of a doctor in a hospital, you don't call for candidates and elect the doctor, but rather you have an expert committee which scrutinizes the applicants and selects the best, most qualified person as doctor. Administration is a task calling for much skill and experience, and election is not the best method to get a good administrator. Obviously, it is the task of an expert committee. The committee or the country can decide on what qualities are required. You can consider the income tax paid by individuals, and people who have paid maximum income tax throughout their life can be considered as the members of the administrative machinery. And then you can consider other contributions like contributions in science, arts, sports and so on. What I am saying is that election is a pattern which has evolved from an aggressive society or our aggressive animal past. A real human civilized society requires a different method of selecting the administrators, and that is, instead of an election commission, we should have a selection commission.